Chapter 8 talks about pricing, output decisions, perfect competition, and monopoly. You guys remember when we talked about market structure, we said it's very important to differentiate. Are you in a market where it is perfect competition? So all of the people there, they compete, they all provide the same product, and the price will be given based on the equilibrium and by the market forces. Or maybe we are in a monopoly where there's only one producer, and this producer is going to decide on the price, and they also decide on the quantity that they produce. So this chapter talks about competition and market types and economic analysis, pricing and output decisions in perfect competition and monopoly markets. Implications of perfect competition and monopoly for managerial decisions. The learning objectives of this course is to describe and provide examples of the four market structures, compare the degree of price competition among the four market types, explain why P equal MC. Do you guys know what's MC? Marginal cost. When is P equal MC? If it's a perfect competition. Lead firms to the optimal level of production in competitive markets. And then we'll talk about MR equals MC. And this is the main principle in economics, which is you always continue to produce until your marginal revenue equals your marginal cost, and then you stop. Because if you produce one more unit and it's going to cost you more than the revenue that you will get from that specific unit, why produce it? You need to stop. And it helps a monopoly to determine its optimum quantity. So that's how monopolies decide when they stop production. And then we're going to contrast the relationship between MR equal MC rule and the P equal MC rule. This rule applies to everyone, but this one here, it only applies to competitive markets. And we will talk about the shutdown rule. Shutdown rule is, when do you shut down? Do you shut down if you are not making enough profit? If your profits are zero, do you still work or you shut down?
Yeah, still work.
You may still work.
Zero cannot.
It covers your average cost.
As long as we can cover our average variable cost, then we can continue. If we don't reach the average variable cost, it means we are not able to cover the marginal cost, and we are not able to cover some of the fixed cost importantly used for the production of the units we have already produced. And that's when you have to shut down. In accounting, sometimes they tell you we do depreciation. Remember when you do depreciation per production? Did you take that in your accounting class? So the reason you do that, because you want to make sure that you are able to cover all of the fixed cost that has been used for your production.
Calculate the contribution margin.
So you want to make sure that you have a contribution margin that is going to cover your fixed cost, at least for the amount that depreciated. Now here we're talking about perfect competition. And what's a good example for a perfect competition? We're talking about all of the groceries, right?
Agriculture.
Fruits, vegetables, commodities. If we're talking about potatoes, no one has a power over potatoes. There's a large number of relatively small buyers and sellers. They have a very standardized product. Got big potatoes, small potatoes. Not big much of a difference. But we're talking about general potatoes. Very easy market entry and exit. If I want to work in the potatoes business, I just get the farm, grew potatoes, I start to sell. If I want to exit, instead of I farm potatoes, I just do tomatoes. I'm exiting the market. And non-price competition is not possible. It's almost not possible. People in marketing will tell you, oh, you never work in that area. And they tell you about those bananas that they have a sticker on. because they try to differentiate. But generally, we're looking at non-process competition to not exist in a perfect competition. Monopoly, on the other hand, it talks about the absolute market power, subject to government regulations. Why do we always see monopoly? We see government regulations. Because monopoly has got a lot of bad stuff they do. They don't produce, they control, they may go up, they may not provide, they may decide to stop. So we have a lot of government regulations. And last class we talked about maybe 4 types of government regulations. Sometimes the government says, you are the only telecommunication companies, you have to break it. We have seen government says, this is military. We only have to do it through this particular organization that maybe we own. Sometimes we've got the idea of we have to have electricity powered. So in order for one company to do it, they have to be a monopoly in order to be able to sustain the huge fixed cost. So we've got some cases where government has to step in. We talked about the idea of one firm. You have a unique product. There's always no substitutes. Like the internet providers, there's only one. And that's the only one in this country, which make it to be a monopoly. And there's no substitute for an internet provider. You see, if you have a phone company, it will not substitute. And we've got this market entry and exit difficulty or legally impossible. Sometimes if you have a patent, do you guys remember patent?
Yes.
Or a copyright? So you're the only one who's got the patent. You're the only one allowed to produce this particular drug or this special new mechanism. Do you guys remember Apple when they went into court with Samsung?
Yes.
And then Apple said, hey, look, I am the only one who have invented this idea and you are not allowed to copy me. It's a monopoly over myself. Therefore, they start to make money out of their inventions. And then we've got this non-price competition is not necessary because there is no competition. And then we talked about monopolistic competition. What's a good example for monopolistic competition? We talked about those products that has strong brands. Everyone buy clothes. And there are a lot of clothes companies. Can we say that clothes are on a competitive market? Is it perfect competition?
No.
No, it's not a perfect.
You know, if you go, you get this Armani, you get this, I don't know, Versace, you get this special Lulucati. All of these are examples of brands that people are willing to maybe pay more or pay less. They actually have non-price competition is very important. So, you know, they say, you know, this is made of this special designer. This is, you know, Yves Saint Laurent, you know, most famous product. And then market entry and exit is a little bit easy. Anyone can go into the clothes, make your own brand, and you start to sell tomorrow. If there's a lot of profit in those special nice jackets out of, I don't know, cats. And if you decide you want to exit, you can also easily exit. And your products are differentiated. Now, you guys okay with the monopolistic? So now we talked about perfect, potatoes, monopoly, special medication, monopolistic, special designer clothes. And last, we've got here the oligopoly. And of course, the duopoly, where you have two only. It's also the same as oligopoly. Product differentiation and firm dominance of the firm, of the market. So that's when you have small number of large mutually independent firms. Got 2-3 big companies. We talked about examples of OPEC. We said 5 countries or 10 countries, they get together and they say, hey, it can be differentiated or standardized. Market entry and exit is difficult. It's not easy to go into an oligopoly. In the oil, OPEC, you have to be a country with a big quantity to affect the total production of the world or the prices of the world. In case of like locally here, Yemen Mobile, MTN, the GSM operators, these people, if they want to enter the market, you have to have a license. And we also have the examples of, if you go to this, small. Remember when we talked about the last gas station in the road? So if we're on the last, at the end of the road, and there are two gas stations, those two, they have non-price competition become very important for them. But at the same time, they are dominating this small market. And we said there is a key important issue with the oligopoly is that when you have few, they start to get messages between them. They start to listen to each other. They don't respond only to the customer or the market. Rather, they are always a reflection of what the other party is doing. They're trying to collude. Here is an example of this market characteristics. Perfect competition, monopolistic, oligopoly, monopoly. Here we have one small, large number, very large number. The type standardized, differentiated. Here it can be either way, either standardized or differentiated. And in a monopoly, you always have to be unique. Market entry, easy, difficult, very difficult, or impossible. Remember, in a monopoly, you need to have some new invention. You need to have some special, maybe big, huge infrastructure. Non-price competition, the idea of impossible, possible, not necessary. Here, you don't need to compete on price because you're the only one. And here are some of the indicators. These people have very high power, and they're subject to regulations. And here there's no power at all. If you sell tomatoes, you don't have power. Either you sell it, you stay efficient, otherwise you can't control the market. Now, in your industry, are you power? How much power do you have? In your company, how much power? Are you on a high power or in a non-power?
Compared to the market?
In your market, let's say, for example, if you are an oil company, you have very high power, you have the government owned, it's it's a huge fixed assets, and then other examples maybe you're in the training business, you have a lot of but maybe you're on a monopolistic. You sell lemon juice like everyone else in the street who sell lemon juice. Here we got examples: perfect competition, agriculture, financial, commodities. Financial instruments like stocks and bonds, mutual funds. Sometimes you get this, interest. If you go borrow money from different banks, here you can get what is it? What is it? The name of the CAC bank? Wadiyat al-Barakah. I'm trying to do differentiation, but it's the same idea. You go buy a bond. Okay, they may try to give it a name and a brand, and they give you a small piece of paper or a long sheet or stamped by 10 stamps, security paper. It adds to the value, but the marketing people work hard, but at the end it's almost perfect competition. Monopoly, on the other hand, pharmaceutical with patents, utilities, last chance gas station on the road. Monopolistic competition, like boutiques. What's the best boutique in Yemen? Abir al-Zuhur is a nice boutique. Which one of them? Oh, okay. Now, let's see. Next, we've got here oligopoly. Examples will be oil refinery, processed food, airlines. They're more like an oligopoly. Internet access and cell phone services.
Processed food is an oligopoly.
If you have, for example, how many companies here in Yemen they sell dairy products?
Dairy products.
Talking about like 3 or 4. These people, they are few. They can.
So they're like oligopoly.
They're almost like an oligopoly. Let's see. We've got basic business decisions entering a market using the following questions. How much we produce? It's an important question. If we produce such an amount, how much profit will we earn? And if a loss rather than a profit is incurred, will it be worthwhile to continue in the market in the long run or exit? So these are the important questions for this chapter. So here are some of the key assumptions about perfectly competitive markets. We've got here the firm is a price taker, and the firm will make a distinction between the short run and the long run. You guys understand what's the difference between a short and a long run? Normally in a short run we have only one that change. But once we start to see 2 variables change at the same time, it is normally a long run. So let's see what happens here. Some of the other assumptions about perfectly competitive markets is the firm objective is to maximize its profit. You guys know what we mean by maximizing profit?
Yes.
Means we want to get the maximum. And the firm will include its opportunity cost of operations and the total cost of production. So, perfectly elastic demand curve. Does this happen in a competitive market or in a monopoly? And a competitive. So once we have a perfect competition, we start to have an elastic demand curve. Consumers are willing to buy as much as the firm is willing to sell at the going price. So here, if you are producing tomatoes or potatoes, your demand curve will be straight line. All the people, how much is the kilo for tomatoes these days? 400. So you go 400. If the price go up, you go to the next one. And if you are selling tomatoes, the price is 400. If you sell less than 300 or 400, that's going price, you lose. And if you increase, people will immediately run from you.
Buy salsa for tomato.
Yeah, maybe you move to a salsa. Now the firm will receive the same marginal revenue for the sale of each additional unit, and it's equal to the price of product. So I produce 10, if I do 11th, I'll get the same revenue and the same marginal revenue for every 1 more kilo I sell. And we said this is different than if you are in a monopoly. Because in a monopoly, if you produce 1 more unit, you try to sell it, you will have to reduce the price. You will have to have some salespeople. You will have to pay commission for distributors. You just can't do it by yourself. There is no limit to the total revenue that the firm can gain in a perfectly competitive market. Are you guys okay with this? And we talked about marginal revenue and marginal cost approach. Let's see before this. You understand this line? Let's take this example here.